Welcome all, this is Gareth on the iMoot team. I'd like to welcome Tom Wilson, who's going to talk about using Lesson to create personalised feedback on alcohol use to underage drinkers. Thank you much, Tom, for your time today and for sharing your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Gareth. The reason I'm using Lesson to create personalized feedback is primarily because of my profession as a counselor for alcohol and drug abuse for typically college students that are, I would say, the high-risk college students that are around age 18 to 19, basically freshmen. And so I frequently in my practice get referrals for individuals who get picked up, arrested, charged, etc., for underage drinking possession or minor in possession. And I thought that this was a couple of years ago that it would really be, since I was already using Moodle, I thought that if Lesson were ever modified so that I could use it to provide personalized feedback to these clients of mine online and without having to spend a lot of time individually counseling them, that might be something that would be of use to them to help them stay out of trouble. And so consequently, since that time, since I had that original thought several years ago, research has advanced and now, we've got data and everything is data driven. So I'll just go ahead and proceed with the next slide here. And it's become one of the major problems in the United States for several reasons, but this is just some of the demographics and the prevalence of the problem. So we've got kids drinking earlier and earlier down to age 12. And when it says, the study says that it's more than just a few sips of alcohol, my finding has been several years in a row that they typically drink around 5 standard drinks per occasion, where it's either one of those red cups from a keg or a 12-ounce beer or shot of whiskey, or sometimes it's malt liquor, etc. But because my practice primarily has a focus on underage drinking, I started to find that I just didn't have enough time to see people individually and do counseling that would aimed at reducing their risk, because you can't really get them to stop entirely. So a lot of them are college students who have well-to-do parents, and so they can't monitor these kids, and they get into groups. And for example, in Santa Barbara, I don't really actually have a contract with a college, but what they are doing is that they're using one of my programs for their housing facility where all the students stay. In Santa Barbara, and they typically get caught with alcohol in their room. What a surprise. So when they do, they were referred to an internal program at the college in an effort to get them to reduce their drinking and to also get them in compliance with campus policy so they wouldn't get kicked out of their housing. So after a while, I started getting referrals from this particular college, and it's really 2 colleges. One's a community college, and the other one is a university in the California system. And what they were finding is that the people that were referred to me did better than the ones that they did internally on outcome. And what I had done for my program was to build in this self-assessment right at the beginning of the class, and that seemed to have somewhat of a better impact. But it's by no means scientific, other than there's scientific evidence to show that individuals who get feedback about their drinking tend to, and when it's compared to their peers, tend to do better than those that are just lectured or given some kind of a standardized class. So what we find, as I mentioned earlier, is that young people, particularly young males around age 18, drink a lot more than even an adult. And on average, they drink about 5 standard drinks per occasion. And that's been defined by the National Institute of Mental Health as binge drinking. And I'm going to take a closer shot of this infographic. So one of the things that you'll see in a newspaper occasionally is that some kid falls off a balcony and dies. We've had that here in Idaho where I live. It happens just, I would say, in every college, particularly in the United States. And of course, there's other places where it happens more frequently, but it's enough that we find that binge drinking is going to raise the risk for early premature death, accidents, injuries, more visits to the emergency room, and they're more likely to drive under the influence, which presents a whole other layer of problems. So here's some more of the risks involved with underage drinking. So my feeling was that because now I had been using Moodle for some time and developing courses for both adults who were at risk for problems and now I began to move more into the younger population. And that population is actually called emerging adults between 18 and 25. And those are probably the ones that are rated highest on insurance. So there's no difference between that population and what the insurance company says. This is a group that's at high risk for risky drinking and for these kinds of things like car crashes, homicides, suicides, particularly alcohol poisoning and injuries. And oddly enough, drowning, that's like the second leading cause of death for a lot of people in this age. A lot of emergency room visits, so I thought, well, perhaps I should develop something for these guys. So in the health risks, we see increased risk for physical and sexual assault on and off campus, and they're more likely to be the victim of physical or sexual assault. Of course, there's no impulse control. The other research that I came across shows that brain development continues well into a person's 20s. And so we talked about that that emerging adult stage, which is the 18 to 25. And they continue to have a variety of problems, cognitive impairment, particularly poor impulse control, and it's just well established that there's a multitude of problems. The prevention of alcohol problems has really gone through a major developmental change. In the old days, it was just say no, and then we would put people in special classes, and then we would do individual counseling, and then some people, like we still do here, strangely enough, rallies, which show absolutely no impact on drinking behavior. Lecturing and scare tactics don't work. Bringing in a motivational speaker doesn't work. I just see our public agencies here waste a lot of money on tactics that have no evidence of efficacy. That just doesn't work. And then when I mention things that say, well, let's use an evidence-based practice, they don't even know what I'm talking about. But it's clearly that an evidence-based practice is exactly what I'm presenting here, which is if you can change an adolescent's or young adult's beliefs about how much his peers drink or don't drink, it can significantly reduce their underage drinking. The reason is that adolescents around 18 or 19, tend to vastly overestimate how much their peers drink. They vastly overestimate how much pot they smoke. They vastly overestimate a lot of risky behaviors. And simply by being presented norms in a non-confrontational way, the research shows that they can, it's called normative feedback. So P is personalized normative feedback, is feedback about their own drinking in comparison to the drinking of their peers or even other adults. It's just as effective. So it doesn't make any difference which reference group they're using. We're finding that for some people, a reference group like, well, those people are not like me because they're adults, is effective or is not effective. While in other cases, some studies show that just any reference group that's close to them in age or appearance or gender is significant in changing the outcomes of drinking, the frequency, the amount, etc. So if we take a look at the lesson module, we usually concentrate on question pages. I don't know how familiar everybody is, but at the end I'll have some references. I won't get into the entire procedure on how to set up a lesson page. And there's already good instructional videos out there by many Moodle users that have, will take you right through all the steps. But what we have used in the past, and what I use primarily in all my courses, has been the Moodle. We use almost primarily the lesson module in all of our content. I have about 38 different courses I've developed. And I would say that probably 99% of those uses the Moodle lesson module. It allows us to provide feedback, but if you go into a Moodle lesson setup, you'll find out that there's two types of pages that the lesson has. One of them is called the question page, and the other one is called the content page. Now, the content page used to be called branch tables, and so with a branch table, a person could not necessarily answer a question and get a grade, they weren't graded on it, but they would be taken down different paths or different levels, if you will. So very similar to a create your own adventure program or modules that were used in the past. I found that to be entirely suited for what I wanted to do, because I wanted to be able to customize the feedback to a client or a patient depending on what they said. For example, I've been with my wife in the hospital the past few days. She got a new knee, and that's an experience that I would really not like to replicate. However, one thing I did notice is I became acutely aware of all the choices a person has to make while in hospital. For example, what is your pain level? All right, if your pain level is an 8 rather than a 2, that's going to lead you down a different path. That's a different decision that the nurse or the doctor has to make. So if they say, if your my pain level is a 2, then you're going to press choice A, which will probably take you down a path of less intensive intervention, less intensive attention to what the problems are, less intensive everything. However, you hit the 8 or the 9, you're going to, so if I were to build another Moodle lesson regarding pain management, which I think would be fairly easy to do. I've been thinking about that today. So if I pressed an 8 or a 9, that would provide, the content page would read differently than a content page that was a 2. So you set up a number of options depending, and each option is different. So it's a way to deliver normative feedback. And for example, I might say, you told us your pain level is 8. This suggests that the doctor needs to reassess your pain level and your level of medication. So that would lead down to a path of, are you allergic to narcotics? Yes or no? And then that would lead, okay, if you are, you would go down a different path. Have you ever had an allergic reaction to a narcotic? Then you go down a different path. And pretty soon, you get a very Byzantine structure. You start getting a decision tree, if you will, and doctors have those, I think, already. They already have medical decision trees that they follow anyway, and I'm thinking that this is exactly the same thing. However, no one needs to be in charge. If we already know what the norms say and what the norms mean, for example, if you're drinking 18 to 20 drinks a week, you're at higher risk than someone who drinks 14 to 15 drinks. So that's how I set this up, and that's called a behavioral health issue. So I believe that there are a number of different behavioral health issues, such as obesity, taking care of your diabetic neuropathy, smoking, lack of exercise, not going to the gym when you're supposed to, weight, etc. All of those things have a high propensity for being addressed using normative feedback, saying, well, you know, your body mass index, your BMI is a 55. This suggests that you're at increased risk for a heart rate. So the content page would be either low, medium, or high risk. So we'll take a look at that here in just a minute. So that's how I chose lesson, and then I've been testing this for about 2 years, and we're having some pretty good luck with it, except for those people who really are low risk. The low risk folks who come in with a pretty clean profile don't seem to get as much of it as, because they don't think they already know that they're at low risk. But the high risk folks are not so much. So that's why I like to do that. This is our login page, so we're going to actually, I did some screenshots, and if you notice I have put Tom Wilson Counseling and Telehealth Center. I've recently gotten into a couple of different groups that I'm associated with, and everybody in there is telehealth oriented. So telehealth means, of course, using technology, particularly internet technology, communication technology, for addressing health issues, and this is becoming a bigger and bigger field. So you'll probably see my name. Some of the links that I gave you are for some of the groups that I'm involved with. We're primarily telehealth oriented, and that's sort of my new field. So this is how we're set up. We've got some instructions here for logging in as a standard 2.5. You will notice that this is a tweak of the My Moodle page, and because I really believe that you really need to dumb it down for folks, I have had many clients who have learned from about, UX, and the user experience has to be very clean and simple. So the course that we're going to be covering that I developed is really not a graded course, but it's simply a way of providing feedback to clients. And it's called a brief self-assessment and personalized feedback report. So a person would go onto this, this is basically my Moodle page. But you'll notice down here, this is what we added last year. This is an attempt to do some gamification. We did some tweaking and some added feedback. So you'll notice back here, this is not typical of a My Moodle page, so we've tweaked it to add as much information as a client needs so that they don't get lost, because our clients do tend to get lost. We have a broad variety of clients. We've had anywhere from age 16 all the way to age 88 from a variety of places. And if you look at one of the links, I provided you a map of where all my clients come from, so you can see that we have clients from all over the world, but primarily focused in the United States. But again, this is where we give some people feedback so that they don't go back and try to get a higher score, because that is pretty typical for them. So I'm constantly using feedback to guide my clients so that they can make their experience a better one. So they select this course, and this is the first page. As you see, it's a work in progress. I'd like to see, I really need to have probably some more graphics in here, but this just basically states, welcome to your assessment. This is what you're going to be doing. We're going to be assessing your personal risk factors, your level of alcohol use, suggestions for reducing your level of alcohol use. But primarily, the focus is to provide feedback and say, hey, did you know that you told us you do this? Well, and then on the content pages, you have 5, excuse me, I'll just report to you. I'm not using badges, but I am using certificates, in case, I don't know who's that. We've been thinking about using badges, and I think that would be a great idea. So again, we'll just we hit continue, and actually this particular page is a content page, but we just put the word continue as one of the buttons that we click on. Okay, I think this is a pretty good example of a typical page that we use. So we start out with an assessment of your weekly drinking amount. How many standard drinks do you have in a week containing alcohol? And then below is a definition of standard drinks, and then there's also a comparison, because we know that we have a lot of European clients. Let me just tell you who they are. Our clients are people who come to the United States, and as we like to say, they come on vacation and go home on probation. That is, they get a DUI or they get an alcohol or drug-related offense while in the U.S. while they're partying. And then when they go back home to the U.K. or to Russia or Madagascar or wherever, they still have an obligation to the court, and the court doesn't care where they're from. They say everybody who gets in trouble for this offense here in this state has to do a class for alcohol or drugs. And so I've been able to, at a very, I would say 8 or 10 years ago, I started doing this for my clients because I had a lot of truck driver clients. That is, people that drove long-haul trucks and delivered goods all over the United States. And they weren't able to come in like every Saturday to do my mandatory class. So I developed, started using Moodle to deliver content to them, and then figured out how to grade them. And I think I started out with Moodle 1.9. So the courts approved it. They thought that would keep the people out of the system, and we've had really no trouble since. Although there are a few jurisdictions that don't believe in it, we still have a few Luddite states out there. So this is a content page with 5 choices. We've arranged the choices horizontally, and what we've done is, instead of trying to be very specific about, and I think it would take more programming and more time than I have to figure out how many drinks exactly, we've just given ranges, and we've been able to develop norms based upon national studies of where people fall. So let's say a person selects, okay, well, based upon standard drinks and my calculations as to how many drinks I have, I think I drink 8 to 14 drinks per week. Okay, so they would click on this particular tab right here, and it would take them to the next page. Here's the feedback page, and this is what's called a normative feedback page. You told us you drink 8 to 14 standard drinks per occasion. This graph illustrates how your weekly drinking compares to others in the United States. And so let's see if I can't quite see that, so I'm going to blow it up. Your average drink is 8 to 14 drinks per week. Only 81% of all males and 94% of all females in the United States drink less than you. Meaning, that's typically a lot based upon the WHO, the World Health Organization, is the organization that set the norms and the standards for drinking. They say if you exceed a certain standard, for example, I think it's more than 21 drinks, you're at, in a week, and actually it's way less for people over 65. So they have their standards, and if you drink more than that, you are at risk for health problems. Their focus is the health problems from alcohol use. All right, so I'll back that off. Okay, so that, if you'll notice, down at the bottom there's a continue button. You can't see it, but it's still a content page, and it's still based upon the old branch table configuration. So basically there'll be 5 branches below, but they're actually, called something different now. And so we'll go to the next one. And if you notice that there was no right or wrong answer, it was just, okay, that's the choice that you made, okay? So the next thing we're going to discuss is your blood alcohol concentration during a typical drinking occasion. So there's a link here. Put the red dot on it. There's a calculator, and I don't have the direct link to it. We have a calculator within the Moodle site where they go to that, and it's a whole page on how to calculate your blood alcohol concentration. That is, milliliters of alcohol milliliters of alcohol to blood in the system. Let's see here. And there is a question, do you storyboard the lessons before? And absolutely yes. What I wound up with, storyboarding means that if you don't storyboard, if you don't put your little sticky notes you put up one sticky note to start out with, and then you find out that that sticky note has 5 choices. Each one of those choices leads to another choice, and when you pick that choice, it has another 5 or another 5, and it looks like a giant Christmas tree. So this is a lot of work. You do have to do that, or you're going to get lost. And I think people have tried to do this without doing that, and you absolutely, yes, exactly. So am I. And that's when you see movies on startups and technology, that they usually have a whiteboard covered with sticky notes. That's exactly what we do. Is we have to just go through and move the sticky notes and saying you're going to absolutely get lost. So again, they're going to get feedback. So let's say someone picks my 0.11 to 0.15. That's fairly high alcohol. So let's see if that's the one we picked for the example. Let's see. Oh, and then that would take them. So let's see, what is this? Oh, you also do your blood alcohol concentration when you drank the most. Okay, and then you picked out, okay, when I drank the most, and you might have picked this one, 1.5 to 1.9. And then we'll go here, and so you told us you drink 15 to 21 drinks per week. These are not in any particular order, but I'm just using them as an example. So what we do is we give feedback on the cost of that number of drinks per week. If an average drink costs $3.50, then you spend, notice there's no lecturing here, we just thought we'd tell you that you spend $200 to almost $300 a month on your drinking. Oh, by the way, you could have downloaded 160 to 225 songs from iTunes, gone to a movie so many times, gone to eat so many times. And of course, there's no nagging or lecturing, just, oh, by the way, you could have done something else for that money. So we hit the continue, so you would hit the continue button, and I don't remember exactly. Oh, did you realize that beer has calories? And vodka does as well. So depending on what you drink. So we've tried to cover as many brands as possible, and I sometimes refer to this when I'm out golfing. I'm saying, okay, let me go get my chart, because I really want a beer, but I'm not about to have a Guinness Stout, so because way too many calories. So based upon what you told us, and assuming you drank good old Budweiser, you consume from 8,400 calories to 1,160 calories a month from alcohol. And down below, it's kind of cut off, but how much exercise is needed to burn off 100 calories, which is about, in an average beer, and a light beer is about 100 calories. And when it's not light, it's much more. So it tells you how many miles you have to go to burn off that many calories. So again, these are, and I think this is the explanation. So generally speaking, a 150-pound person burns about 100 calories for every traveled. Yeah. Yes, we do have an app for that. I think there is one, yes. I'll just mention that there's an app. I guess they have a breathalyzer app now that you can attach to your iPhone, but they did some research on it. It doesn't work so well. So I would not rely on that before I decided if I was going to drive. Okay, I'm ready to continue. All right, and so how do you do this? This is not going to be in a lot of detail, okay? But thank you for mentioning about the storyboarding. That's step number one. Before you even choose to do the lesson either through this or maybe even a book or some other method. But I like the idea that the feedback that the person is going to get is going to depend entirely upon what options they chose. So here, obviously, you add in step one, you add an activity, you choose a lesson right here. And it's nice that the lesson tells you what you can get from, what am I going to get if I choose a lesson? And again, it can be a very big decision tree. Step two is to expand all and set appropriate lesson settings, and depending on how you want it to look and what you want it to do and how you want it to flow. I can't recall all of them. There's just way too many, but be sure that if you're, odds are that if you try your first run and if it's not working for you, go back to your it's probably something in your settings. So here's an example, assessment, let's see, edit the lesson, add an assessment question with multiple choices. So this is where your own content comes in. So if, remember we were talking earlier about, I just spent a few days in the hospital with my wife, and they were asking her on a scale of 1 to 5. So I thought, okay. And she says, well, I was a 1, but now I'm 5. And the reason was that the pain block started to wear off, and she thought she was just fine, and Queen of England, etc. And not so much, because once the pain block wore off, the pain shot up from a 2 to a 5. And so if she would have come in, she would have chosen choice number 1, but now she's choosing number 5, and how do I get rid of this? And so we had to wait until we were able to get that going before we could leave the hospital. So that makes it very relevant in saying, okay, there's probably a few things that the rest of the creative little community could come up with that we could just plug in. So all of the content, any kind of idea that might, or problem, behavioral health problem that is likely to respond to a behavioral health intervention would probably be plugged into this if you had the proper norms. And of course the norms are usually determined by large agencies like the World Health Organization or the American Society for behavioral health standards, etc. But I think you can. The main thing is that it's pretty simple to set this up, but to keep track of the multiple choices of the different pathways is the hard part. So you would add clusters for each choice, and if you take a look, then on this particular area, you can see in the editing portion of it that here is the response, and this is a feedback page, and we're going to provide specific feedback for that page. So each page is likely, each choice is going to have different kinds of feedback depending on which page you have. So you're going to wind up again with sort of a big Christmas tree, the decision tree. All right. So edit the question after creating cluster pages for each choice. So content 1. When we say content 1, that's actually a tab that the person's going to see. That's the words that will be on that tab, and if I chose that, that's going to lead me to feedback page for 0 drinks per week. If I click on the content 2 tab, and in our world it's going to be 1 to 7 drinks per week, I'm going to get a different page. I'm going to get the feedback page for 1 to 7 drinks per week, and so on. If I choose 8 to 14, different page, 15 to 21, different page. And so you're going to be getting 5 different feedback pages, and this is where a person really needs to be tracking that. So step 6, create the next page in the sequence for each cluster, and you want to jump to. Now we're moving to continue means that now we're going to talk about a different subject, your blood alcohol concentration during a typical drinking situation. And if you'll notice on the left here, as we talk about your blood alcohol concentration during a typical drinking situation, we're going to ask you to make a choice. And what is the choice? The choices will be either content 2, 3, 4, or 5. And in our world, it's going to be BAC 0.0 to 0.05, maybe 0.9 to 1.5, 1.6 to 1.8, and then 1.9 to or higher. So we have to remember that the content pages are actually anything that's got a content page with an arrow next to it is going to appear as a button, if you will, but not a radio button. It's just going to be there as a tab. Okay, well that pretty much sums up what we've been working on. And what I've done is I've taken this lesson and I've put it in front of. I probably have a dozen different courses for different kinds of uses. For example, we have a drink driver program, what we call in the United States a DUI or DWI program for people that get popped for drinking and driving. We have a minor possession program, a brief course for college students. It's about 3 to 4 hours that we use to provide feedback about their drinking, and so that with hopes that someone would like to study that. We haven't been able to find someone who will do it for free, but we would love to see outcome studies on that. We use that right now at about 3 different universities, and we have no contract with them. They just found that our program was more user-friendly than the one that they had in-house. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is if you actually want to, if you haven't had much practice in doing lessons, and either with question pages or content pages with these branches, here's at least 3 different sites that can be accessed to learn how to do that. I really like the how-to lessons, so I think you'll find that if it's on, there's many, many more of these coming out than there used to be, and so I think it would be fairly easy for a person to learn how to do a basic lesson using either the question pages or the content pages. If you'd like to contact me, there's my email, there's my Twitter account. I also run an account for the Association of Counseling and Technology. This association is for people who are licensed counselors in the United States and the members of the American Counseling Association. And there's a few of us that have an interest in the use of technology for treatment and education and intervention with people with behavioral health problems. So we're forming a new organization. We're trying to get approval from the American Counseling Association. The people in my profession have the lowest tech IQ of anybody that we're familiar with. So there's many more professions that are adopting technology, particularly medicine, such as telemedicine, delivering services to remote areas through the use of information technology. So there's a Twitter feed there, and it's got a lot of interesting articles on using technology with behavioral health issues. So if there is no other issues or concerns, I'd love to open that up to questions, either verbally or through the chat module. So Gareth, would you like to open that up to folks?
Yeah, hi Tom. Thank you very much indeed for a very informative and I found very in-depth and very different and fascinating presentation. Certainly, if anybody would like to, please ask questions, either just open your mics up or type in the chat. Yeah, once again, Tom, thank you indeed.
Thank you.